Ben and Jerry's just one. You guys share. And you're eating for 6. Because I love you. And the beauties. For 9 months. You guys still have 2 more months.
Is a bloody nose worse than a broken bone?
No.
A broken bone is worse.
Man, you want to sit on a Zoom call?
No.
What?
What? Good day.
It got better when Luke stopped by.
I figured it would. Oh.
I was gonna give Amy shit because when I got back from lunch,
Okay, you guys, show your face. I know you're there.
Good day.
Is my audio working? Yep, okay, I see heads nodding, that's good news. All right. It looks like we have 15 people on the line. We'll maybe just wait one more minute. I know I saw a few people had declined the invitation, but I think a majority are planning, and I think probably some forwarded on to other staff. So we'll kind of see who we've got. Also, I did set this up so the meetings will be recorded. So people who aren't able to join, we'll try to get these posted to our website. I am not exactly sure where we'll put those yet, but I'll send a link or something maybe later this week.
So now give us a get out of here.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining. We last left off, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was just last week. It seems time is going a little faster than I can keep up with these days, but talking about mass testing. So we have Caitlin Thomas from the Department of Health who's joined us today. And we also have Tom Martinez, who is on the Special Populations Group with Department of Health and several other state agencies. So I'm not sure how we want to start. I'll maybe just let Tom kind of take over. And I think we might have a couple updates as follow-up to our last conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Julie. And thank you all again for taking the time this afternoon to meet. And again, the purpose of these calls, is just to keep the lines of communication open with you folks, especially you that are moving forward with mass testing. It's an opportunity for us to share some information with you kind of on a regular basis, and then certainly an opportunity for you folks to ask any questions that are pending, or anything on your mind, I guess, COVID related, so to speak.
Close it up, please.
The last time we talked, we did go away with that with some questions that we couldn't quite answer, that we've had some more discussions internally regarding with the Department of Health and with some other folks. I can tell you that they're very good questions, because we're kind of still working through them. I think we got some, and Caitlin, you can jump in here anytime. I think we maybe have some additional information we can share with you regarding those questions, but we're kind of still fine tuning them, so to speak. There were a couple of questions which I would categorize as kind of the scope of the testing, who can be included in the testing. And one of them was regarding, the type of staff, like administrative staff. And the other question kind of related to the non-residential services, like transportation services, employees that are working those kind of services. I guess what I'd tell you, and then I'll let Caitlin either correct me or agree with me or tell you something completely different, is, so this testing is the idea is it's congregate residential settings. So any kind of staff that would have some kind of contact or connection to again a congregate residential setting would certainly be eligible for the testing. So the administrator, yes, you know, clerical staff that again would have some access, potential access to, you know, either with individuals working in those congregate settings or within the settings themselves. Regarding the other services that aren't directly related to those residential settings, that's kind of a gray area. You know, we kind of want to we want to give you the ability to decide which employees you want to test and stuff too, but we can't go too crazy with it either. So I think at this time, I guess we'd suggest that you probably stick to just the staff that are associated or could have contact with those congregate settings. Caitlin, any?
Yeah, I agree. We actually took these through our state epidemiologist and the director of the lab just to get their opinions on it. And again, the testing plan that was written by all the science minds is that our priority populations would include those congregate living facilities. So it could inform practices about whether or not to reinstate day services and other types of non-congregate living areas. However, I think what we discussed and maybe the gray area that Tom's talking about is that any staff that has direct or indirect contact with the residents live there. So it may be a staff of another program that also works in this part. I think that you guys have some latitude to decide to include them because it does affect those living settings.
Okay, and then the other kind of two questions dealt with sentinel testing. And again, we're still kind of having discussions about this, but I think you know, what's, I don't want to say as complicated this, but what's different is that, you know, the sentinel testing that was set up for the providers that previously participated in the mass testing, like nursing homes and stuff, it's just, you guys have very different settings. So it's pulling into some circumstances and some situations that just weren't considered with, you know, those other provider types. And so we're kind of still working through that, but what I can tell you is there seems to be definitely some openness to considering kind of adapting the sentinel testing to your types of settings, even maybe on a, you know, kind of individual provider basis, depending on, you know, what your settings are, what they look like, that maybe some kind of sentinel, you know, unique, so to speak, sentinel testing plan could be devised on an individual provider basis. So that's kind of where we're headed at that, but we're still kind of, I guess, ironing out the details with that. You know, the first step certainly is to get the mass testing done, and then of course then you know, then comes the sentinel testing. So, Caitlin, anything else?
No, I think that's exactly right. So depending on the size and the number of people served, and I think Dr. Southern also said they would support less frequently than weekly, although that would be the recommendation. So it's really going to be, I would say, up to each of you as providers what you think is the most appropriate, and it would be supported by the Department of Health, just to keep that surveillance in place and protect your people.
Tom, this is Jennifer.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So for providers that maybe weren't as interested in the larger mass testing, but I know that there were some that were more interested in just the sentinel testing. Are you saying that the mass testing would be, participation in the mass testing would be required in order to be approved for the subsequent sentinel testing?
Caitlin, go ahead.
Well, what? Not to be
want.
unclear in messaging, but we got kind of two different answers on that. So I would need to clarify. There's some different scientific value in doing the sentinel or surveillance testing without first setting the baseline and understanding if cases exist in the first place. Let me, I'll plan to join you guys on this weekly call, so let me clarify that one further. I'd sure hate to be the person who said it wrong, one way or the other.
Yeah, at this point though, if you're really interested, the sentinel testing is a bit of a carrot for you, so to speak. So if you're really interested in sentinel testing, our suggestion would be then participate in mass testing, and then you will for sure be able to participate in sentinel testing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Caitlin, this is Brian Arty from Advance. For the mass testing at agencies, do you have any recommendations? Should that take place outside? If it takes place indoors, should it be in individual bedrooms or in one location? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, actually, so outside is best if you can do it and the weather allows for it, because that's going to be your absolute best ventilation, and we know that this is carried through respiratory droplets. But there's actually an entire guide that I can send you. Now, keep in mind that I think it's actually geared toward nursing home collections, but it's the same procedure you would follow. So it tells you what personal protective equipment to wear if you go room to room. Even talks about having a second, maybe even non-clinical staff go with you and help stay outside of 6 feet from the person being collected, but help to hand items and protect the integrity of the PPE. So there's a whole lot of information that I can send to Tom, and he can, or Julie, and they can send out to the whole group of you that really lines out how to do a collection event. It's as simple as it sounds. So it's a nasal or a nasopharyngeal swab, depending on which laboratory you're working with. And they're not incredibly time intensive to collect. And I think it was, and I am so sorry because I don't get all of the names of the agencies correct, but I believe it was the agency in Aberdeen that did collect already and had a really good process for how they worked it with, I think, a couple different collectors.
Caitlin, yes, this is Jennifer, and following our call on the 16th, and you guys weren't privy to this update that I had provided to the association members, I had referenced that it to collect, at that time I referenced 100, we actually collected 89, and I had spoken about it took an hour and a half. At that time, I inaccurately reported that it took 2 collectors to collect those samples in an hour and a half. And I was corrected by my RN that there were 2 teams of 2. So there was actually 4 collectors that collected those samples in an hour and a half. The process was relatively fast with all of the coordination that she had put into the effort prior to the collection process, which was substantial. But the actual time for the collection process, it did go real smooth on that particular day.
And you may have some tools that are better to share, because I know the tools that are built for long-term care facilities, the resident rooms are door by door by door by door. And in your group home and wraparound settings, that's not going to be the case. So that might be the best information to share. It's just your best practice.
And I did provide that information after our call on the 16th of some of the specific things that providers should contemplate that were above and beyond the guide that was provided.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes.
This is Pam from LifeQuest. Is there any sort of a timeline on this? Because we're running into some snags a little bit with trying to find help to collect. And we all know kind of some shortages we're having in the healthcare field, but our Avera is not able to maybe get some techs out to us to help us in the next few weeks. It'll be way out there. Maybe I don't know where we need to go to help with nursing, because our nursing can't handle it. If we were to do all of our congregate settings, that's 13. And while I really like, what Jennifer's plan was, that's not doable in a day with what we have nursing staff to be able to do. So we'll probably have to do some sort of bring people here or to a location to do it. And I don't know. And so we're trying to put together a plan, but we can't seem to.
So there's some scientific significance to collecting the specimens close together in time, but I don't think that it is out of the realm of being reasonable to do it across 2 or even 3 days. If your hang up is trying to get 13 locations in one 8-hour period, that does seem like an awful lot. Where are you located?
In Mitchell.
In Mitchell? Okay, I'm not super familiar with Mitchell. I just wonder if there's a different, Avera, I assume the lab is associated with the hospital. I don't know if there's even an occupational medicine or a community health center that might be able to lend assistance. Because you'll already have the collection kits, right?
Well, we're hoping to, yeah. And so I guess I'm wondering too, are you looking at a time frame? Because we're probably way into the middle of August before we can get anything done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we are looking at a time frame. We tried to set, we've been trying to answer questions, and obviously the settings that you're in are very unique. That's why we asked for a planned date before July 31st, which is coming up here at the end of this week. I have to be honest with you, the sooner, the absolute better. What we're going to run into is we've got schools reopening, we've got the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, and we've got our normal seasonal influenza-like illness season coming up. So what I'm afraid will happen is if we don't get these specimens collection and sent in for testing, that the turnaround time in sending a test specimen in and getting the result back is going to be so long based on the capacity of the laboratories, it'll lose a lot of its value.
Yeah, and we talked about that, and we've talked about that with where we've been consulting with as well. So we'll just keep trying.
I know that there are a lot of things going on in the laboratory world too, with their access to supply and what they're expecting for demand as well. So it is pandemic response. So we're all kind of doing the best that we can, and we're learning as we go. But I would say the absolute soonest that you can get a plan in place to collect those specimens would be the best.
Can you maybe give me then a little more guidance on maybe, are there a priority? I have 13 locations that are congregate. Should I maybe set that down? So I'm not trying to, should I look at a certain number? If I'm over 6, if I'm over 4, if I'm over.
Gosh, I really couldn't advise you on that. The priority, as we've said it, is the congregate living facilities. I know initially there was some guidance just to have some kind of a benchmark out there of, facilities housing more than 8 people. However, you share staff in between those settings, I think it becomes important. You're going to have to make your determination on who you want to be involved, but all of those people certainly qualify as part of the priority group that we've set as a Department of Health.
Okay.
Can you talk, this is Julie from Up in Lemon. Can you talk a little bit more about the lab? I guess we followed Jennifer's lead in her consent forms and such, and so she used LabCorp, and so we sent out that we wouldn't be doing the pharyngeal because we thought that the LabCorp did just the, I don't know what the other one is called, but just inside the nasal membranes. So how is it a given that that LabCorp will be assigned to us, or how does that pan out? And maybe you've discussed this and I missed it, but I'm still not clear on it, I guess.
And maybe Jana wants to take this, but I know what we discussed the last time I was with you all, and I can't tell you if that was the last time you all were together or not, is that, you know, to diversify as much as possible. And you may all find it much easier to work with whoever you're already aligned with through other relationships, whether maybe you use one of the systems for a pharmacy partner or a lab partner already. So you know you're not required to use LabCorp, but it is an option available to you. And I'm not familiar enough with who you have for providers that support like your area and your community up there. Is there a Fall River? Do they have a community health center up in your area?
No, everything we have goes to Heading or North Dakota, and actually any COVID tests for the community right now go to Bismarck, to the North Dakota Department of Health. So we'll probably just use LabCorp, I'm assuming.
And there may be, you know, I think that probably we should take that conversation specifically for Lemon, maybe offline with Jana, because we want to look at using the system laboratories, the commercial laboratories like LabCorp, but there are certain situations where maybe the South Dakota Public Health Laboratory is the most appropriate. And maybe this is one of those. I can't say for certain that it is, but just given geographic location and the population, I could see where that might be the case.
Related to specimen collection, is there funding from the Department of Health for that if we have to be contracting with an entity to get the collection completed?
There is not. The funding that is being provided by the Department of Health is for the specimen collection supplies, PPE if needed, and then the actual laboratory testing.
Okay, so the grants that were available for long-term care facilities aren't available for congregate settings, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Julie, I just had a comment for you. We're in the process of doing mass testing right now in our ICF and our specialty hospital, and we're utilizing LabCorp. They do just do the nasal swab. It's not the nasal pharyngeal. So it is very less, I mean, it's much less invasive. I had my test completed today, and it's you know, it doesn't hurt, or it's very quick. And right now, LabCorp is telling us 6 to 7 days in terms of a turnaround rate. That's where they're at right now. We have major concerns about it getting outside of really 3 to 5 days is what we were told originally, and now we're at 6 to 7. You know, I know another provider experienced a 14-day delay, and it's absolutely useless at that point. And so those are some of the things that we're considering in terms of doing all of our congregate residential community settings. We're able to do it quite easily in the ICF and the hospital, but the 38 other locations makes it very challenging.
Yeah, and I guess my pitch for that would just be, again, like the sooner that we can get those done, and then the more we diversify what laboratories we're using so that none of them are maxed to capacity, because we didn't have that same issue when we did the long-term care facilities, which I think that part of your settings were a part of. And I have heard of the longer turnaround times, and I do believe that even some of the systems are experiencing that as well, and that has to do with, you know, supply chain for testing materials and platforms. And so I only see that, I mean, hopefully that will all loosen up and they'll be able to get what they need. But again, there's going to be an increased demand for testing for sure with upcoming events, and I would hate for that to affect the result time, because like you said, what if it's 14 days later, what do you do with the information that you've gotten?
So Jana, before we wrap up, as the point of contact, is there anything you want to say or any information you want to share with the group?
Click down.
I am in the process of working with
the Department of Health and just kind of determining how the process is going to go with LabCorp and the other labs, trying to get some contact people in place for the labs that are already pre-approved by the Department of Health to use for testing. So I think that would be helpful in facilitating the test and kind of taking me out of it as a middle person, still a contact person, of course, for the testing. And I think I've sent everybody that's agreed to the testing the information that we would need from them. And so I hope to get that information out by the end of the week.
Great, thanks.
Is
Okay,
letting Jana know our plans for testing enough, or do we need to contact Department of Health as well?
Jana is communicating that information. We're an interdisciplinary team with DHS, DSS, and the Department of Health working with your setting. So
Yep.
only
So-
one reporting necessary.
Yep.
One final question. This is Jennifer. We'd received some information that rapid tests were going to be made available in the long-term care settings. I'm just verifying if that information is true. And second, is that a plan or anything being worked on in the future for those tests being made available to the CSPs?
I have heard that same information. That is information that has come from the White House, so remains to be seen. And I don't, certainly not privy to if that is planned for any other setting, but that is what has been communicated for long-term care facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, if not, again, we intend to, at least for the time being, have these be weekly calls, so we'll do the same thing next week. In the meantime, of course, that doesn't mean if questions come up, you have to wait a week to ask them. Again, Jana is your primary point of contact, so if something comes up, just shoot her an email or give her a call, and you know, we'll kind of go from there. But thank you again for your time, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.